Okay, so welcome everybody. This is session number 25 of the Innovation Cafe. I'm really happy because after 25 weeks, we are still here, which means there's a value proposition here. And I was sharing with Nadia that I think we are still a very small community, maybe 300, 400 people around the world of corporate innovators, because there's a large community of project managers, scrum masters, product owners, and all of that. But we are the people that I think we have the ability to put everything together, to think about the economic viability, desirability of something, the feasibility. We need to be able to talk with CEOs, with C-level, and also with tech teams. That's why I've started Innovation Cafe as a vehicle to get in touch with all of you so that we can all get to know each other and who knows, make business or whatever. Let's help each other as a community. That's why we are here. And today we have another rock star, Nadya. Hello, Nadya. Nadia is very famous. Okay, so just watch Nadia's TEDx on YouTube because there are a few TEDx videos there. She is also a book author, and I think she will share a few articles or one article from Harvard Business Review regarding reinvention, or stop calling it innovation. By the way, I need to rename the Innovation Cafe to something else because from now on we can't call it innovation. But over to you, Nadia. You are the star. I'm going to mute my microphone now. Okay. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Hugo, for inviting. So when we talked about the subject, what should we talk about? I said, can I be a little bit provocative? And he said, the more provocative, the better. And since I just had an article out called Stop Calling It Innovation, which I will share with you as a PDF. So you guys, if it's easier, PDF is probably easier. I had an article out at Harvard Business Review, which still to this day, for more than 6 months, is creating a lot of fuss for people. So I'm hoping that this is a conversation starter. I have a very short slide deck to get us going. Just a few provocative questions for all of us, and then we can open it up and have a conversation and also make it more pragmatic and so on. In the article, I have examples and cases and so on. I decided that it's easier to have a case in conversation rather than putting it in PowerPoint. So it's meant to be just to get us into conversation, and I will be asking a lot of questions, and you can use the chat, and I usually give you 1 to 3 options so that you can just quickly type number 1, 2, or 3 rather than typing a long answer. So my name is Nadya Zhexembayeva. Indeed, I live in Columbus, Ohio, just a suburb, Galena. I'm originally from the Soviet Union. I was born in the USSR. I grew up in a country that showed up only 15 years ago, Kazakhstan, because we broke the Soviet Union in 91. And I've been living in US and Europe since 98. And I am a recovering academic. Just like a recovering alcoholic, you never quite recover. You always go back to academia, you do research, you do all kinds of projects, more in educational sphere. But in 2007, when I was a Coca-Cola chaired professor at a business school, executive education only business school, I had a student, in quotation marks, he was a CEO of a company in a course, and he said, you speak so nicely, I almost believe you. Problem, you've never ever worked in real business. So before you speak about it, go work in business. And in 2013, we started our own company, which is now a group of businesses. So I'm in this interesting combination of academia, entrepreneurship, and corporate innovation. And I'm super happy to talk about corporate innovation because it was the specialty of our consulting business first, to work with old companies. We really heavily work with mining, extraction, pharma, manufacturing. So companies that are probably not the leaders of innovation. And that's been a very, very exciting journey. So before I say anything else, let me ask you a question. In your estimate, what percentage of a population love innovation? So 100% of population in the world, what percentage of 100%, in your experience, love the whole vibe and energy of innovation, love innovation? Give me the number in the chat. Any percentage is fine. Just any number. Hugo says 1%. Matthias says 10%. Nuno says 1%. Shatai says 2%. Sandra says 90% until they have to do something. And Galina says 15%. It's a very international group. This is exciting. So I am one of the first people to admit, I truly believed when I was young that everyone loves something new, that it's a natural drive, right? Think about babies. Have you ever met an unmotivated baby? The baby that you like need to invite newness into them, or invite or motivate them and stimulate them to innovate. No, babies are born, unless they're sick, they're born as natural innovators. So when I was growing up, I truly believe we all love innovation, until I started working in real world and discovered, of course, that the percentage is rather small. So we don't have universal numbers, but in the article I'll share with you, I refer to at least one study, and this study, particularly interesting, was only in US and Canada, and only knowledge workers. So people with education, with a bachelor degree, who work in a knowledge profession, in information management and so on. So these are the most innovative sample. First of all, US and Canada, generally speaking, as a culture, have more openness to new things compared to, let's say, Asia, where I come from, where we tend to be a bit more oriented towards stability and risk aversion and conservatism. So these are two very open to innovation countries, and the sample is only knowledge educated knowledge workers and college educated knowledge workers. And here was the result. In terms of openness to innovation, in this most progressive sample, 14 to 28% were open to innovation, depending on the age group. So the younger people, higher percentage, the older people, smaller percentage. But even more interesting, innovation sounds good until you, as some of you say, actually have to act on it. And act on it means being open to risk, being open to failure. And in terms of openness to risk, it's even a little bit worse. The older population, even in this sample, no more than 11% are open to risk, and 25% at the best. So even if we take the most open to innovation people, very small percentage is interested in it. And then on top of that, if we open it up to a general population, we are looking at well under 10% who are interested in this subject and even have a desire to try something new. And for me, as both educator and a business owner, as a mother of a 16-year-old, this was a shocking discovery, because I worked with a very large number of companies. I partnered with a very large number of consulting companies, reinventing big corporations. And I was absolutely sure that we're in a better space when it comes to innovation, but really we're not. So I want to share 3 starting points, and then we will open it to conversation on why the numbers are so low, even in the most progressive groups, no more than 25%, and overall, well under 10%. So what is going on? Number one that I want to share is that we all keep talking about VUCA. We talk about this idea that the world is becoming volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, that it's very crazy for many years. This is a term since 1987, and we've had used this term in business for good 15 years. But unfortunately, when you look at the results, we're not living that world. So if you look at the original list of Fortune 500 companies, the untouchable and unsinkable businesses of the world, 88% of those companies disappeared, and it took them 60 years. But you look forward and look at the projections of companies like Innosight before COVID-19 and the economic mess that we're expecting from it. And already until 2027, 50% of all Standard & Poor companies were expected to be off the list. And it used to be that you climb as a corporation, and then you get your spot on top, and you can stay there for 5 years or more. 77% of all companies that got to the peak of the industry used to stay 5 years or more. Right now, that number is down to 44%, which means you can climb to top and you will be off in a matter of just a year or two. You will not preserve your peak position. It will not be a safe space. And when it comes to actual ability to implement change, to bring innovation and monetize on it, to transform something in a business, it used to be that the number was very stable, 30% success rate, 70% failure. But today that number just got a little bit worse. This is the study from 2019, and we just got worse. 75% of all attempts in business to bring something new, whether it's a small type of innovation, incremental, in a subsystem, or radical at the level of ecosystem, in all dimensions, we are not successful 3 out of 4 times. So the first thing that seems to be going on is that the world is clearly upside down, but we keep going business as usual. We keep pretending that it's just a phase, that we will just sit it out and wait it out, and our overall culture is not open to it. So why is it not open to it? It's because we are not yet turning VUCA into opportunities. So tell me, in your company, in your setting, in your experience, in your environment, how good are you, your team, your corporation right now at turning VUCA reality into new opportunities? So if it's great, you're great at that, that would be 1 in the chat. If you're good but could be better, that would be 2 in the chat. And if you're not yet there, if this is really not, that would be a 3. And I see Shatai says 3, Matthias says 3, yeah, Bruna says 3, Xena says 2, so a little bit better, good. So as you can see, even from our answers, we're not yet, even though it's been 15 years of successful, consistent conversation about VUCA in many, many different formats, articles, conferences, and so on. Unfortunately, we're not yet really living that reality. We are pretending that this is a kind of temporary thing. Why are we pretending that it's a temporary thing? Because there's this wisdom that is going around in corporate world, which is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And we're still here, so why would you go about? And this comes from the history of life cycles that we live through. And you all know that we all go through life cycles, our companies go through life cycles, our products go through life cycles. And of course, a business model goes through a life cycle. And we all know from long research that we don't have to be in decline. We don't need to die. What we can do, we can start a new cycle and a new cycle and a new cycle, which in a classic literature called jumping the S-curve. So we can just go from one business model to another, from one version of our business. In a innovation speak or startup speak, this is pivoting. We can pivot and pivot and pivot until we find a new version of ourselves. But what corporations don't understand, unfortunately, why there's such a resistance to innovation, to anything new, why is this really not happening yet, and most people don't really engage in anything new, is because they don't understand when innovation, reinvention, new cycles should start. So research is very clear about that. If we start the new cycle at the decline, on the right side, so here in this picture, this would be the red side. If we start a new cycle at the stage of decline, the chances of our company ever going back to the peak historical performance are only 10%. Which means if we start fixing things when they're already broken, when we see decline in performance, in sales, in market share, we're cooked. 90% death rate, 10% chances of success. And if any of you help the company pivot at the decline, you know what kind of crazy blood, sweat, and tears it is. Which means we need to start reinventing when we're on the left side of the cycle. We need to start innovating when we're on the left side of the cycle. And what does your team say if you're climbing up on the cycle? You are still approaching that peak maturity. You're on the left side, you're on the blue side. And you are coming into them and say, guys, it's time to pivot. What will your team say to you? What would be a normal, healthy response once your team is listening to your proposal, they're still in a growth mode. They're still climbing. They're trying to reach their KPIs. They're like, we're almost there. The projection is very positive. And you come in and say, we're pivoting. We're starting a new S-curve. What will your team say? Give me some short thing. Will it be more on a yay, or will it be more of a nay? Positive or negative? Nuna says they will resist. Somebody else? Absolutely. Anybody else? What do you think they will say? What does your team normal say? Nay. More like show me a PowerPoint and explain. Big resist, says Matthias. Hugo says in Europe, they will absolutely resist. I actually work all over the world and they resist everywhere. They resist even in an innovative company, they resist. Why do they resist? Because they have this story that don't fix it until it's broken. They do not have the data. They don't understand the idea that if you start reinventing on a decline, you're pretty much done. The financial resources are shrinking. The emotions are running high. The political will is not there. You simply don't have the resources for the jump, because notice, when we are jumping an S-curve, there's always a bit of a step back, right? There's a dip in the performance because we are prototyping, we're testing, we're not yet at the level of sustainable business model. It is a bit of a loss. So naturally, everyone is afraid of that, and you need some resources to make it happen. So number one, we are not yet living real VUCA strategy. Number two, we are pretending that it's okay to wait until things are broken to fix it, where reality and the data is very consistent that this is not the case. So we have to start moving the culture and the mindset of the people that we can no longer wait until things are broken. If we wait until they're broken, we are all cooked. We need to figure out how to break a company before somebody else will. And how many of you have already done this in your business? How many of you have broken things in your business before they stopped working for you? If you have, put a 1 in the chat. And if you have not, put a 2 in the chat. 1, great. So Bruno already has that experience. Excellent. Matthias is still no, which is also normal. Most of you are in the 2, Sandra is in 1. Notice, generally Galina is in 1, great. Notice, even in this community, which is a more open-minded to change, open to innovation, it's still 50-50 for us. Imagine what it will be in a mining company, on a production floor, what it would be in a typical retail where everyone is clinging to their normal reality. So no wonder they hate innovation, because innovation is just something that messes up their normal life. And final point that I want to make is that part of it is not really our employees' fault or our corporation fault or our own fault. Part of it has come from a historic predicament, for a particular history that we just came out of. Because generally speaking, as a civilization, we've been educated out of ability to renew very consistently. So what do I mean by that? If you look at the history of the recent economic reality and you look at the typical life cycle, for absolute majority of the recent history, which is about 200 years, the average life cycle of a company was 75 years. That means that I could graduate from a university, enter your company, work in your company my entire life, go to a pension, and never see one pivot. Not even one. We just keep doing exact same thing. Don't mess with it. Don't rock the boat. We've always done it that way. That is where we all come from. That's where our education system comes from. That's where our planning systems come from. That's the assumption behind our financial models. You know, the debt to equity ratio all comes from this. This is the old world. And then this world started crashing at around late 1980s, early 1990s. Few things combined. Geopolitical, the Soviet Union collapse, opening of Berlin, Germany, collapse of Berlin Wall, opening of China, and that real move towards globalization combined with technological boom of the 90s. And suddenly the cycle shifts from about 75 average to about 15 average. If I had almost 40 years before the mid-cycle to jump, to pivot, now I only have 7.5. That's a whole new world. That's a whole different business toolkit. And we still keep using all the tools from the past. And then, of course, now, 2020, 15 was already in the 90s, wasn't it now? So if you were to guess, what would be your estimate for the average length of a business life cycle today? We are averaging out across all industries, so you don't need to be super precise. But if you were to guess, it was 75 years, then 15 years. What is the average length now? Matthias says 5 years. Nuno says 1 year. Somebody else? Depends. Banking still big from 10 to 15, says Bruna. What would be your average? Should I say 3? Great. Anybody else? What would be your average? What would be your estimate? It is very much varies by the industry, but we have completed 2020 research about 1,000 executives participated. Galina says 5, and depends on the field. In tech, maximum 4, says Xena. We just completed this research. It will come out in my new book, so you guys are the very first to see it. I literally have not yet showed this graph to anyone. So this is the graph that compares our own research 2018 with our own research 2020. How often do you need to pivot? And you can see that today, 16.1% every year or less. That's how often you need to pivot, which means the cycle is under 2 years. We usually pivot about midway through the cycle. 43.9 every 2 to 3 years. We are looking at the cycles that we simply never seen, with the average life cycle right now being not 75, not 15, but 6, which means we only have half of the cycle to pivot. Instead of having 37.5 years or 7.5 years, at best we have somewhere around 3. This means we need a whole new world. Our finance models are all rooted in the idea that we have long, stable cycles. That's why the debt is the friend of a corporation. That's why we're all in debt, because we lived in a stable world, but this world doesn't exist anymore. That means our skills and education system should be very different. Our HR system should be very different. Our planning should be very different. Our processes should be very different. That means a whole different way of living with the world. So I will stop here. I have much more data that you can get in a free preview. So I will give you a link a little bit later. And I want to make sure I give you also an article I mentioned. But I want to stop here and open up this discussion to what does this all mean for you pragmatically? How do you change in your business? What do you do in your business? I'm sure you have comments and questions and so on. And while I'm loading the article, maybe you guys want to turn on the mic and tell us a comment, a question, or type it up. If you don't feel like speaking, type it up so that we can make it into something more pragmatic, because I want to make sure it's actually pragmatically transferred to you. Hugo, maybe you, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I want to ask you, like, the financial models that you have taught, you have, shared the brand to equity model or the financial model that they're 100 years old, even in the banking system, they go through the same process, they go through the same financial model. So how can we reinvent that? The financial models. I'm talking about the creativity in finance, because when you look at the accountant, when you look at the chartered accountant, even when you look at the people who have done, courses regarding the risk management, they share the same 100-year-old knowledge. They, follow the same 100-year-old process. But I think this whole finance thing also needs to, buckle up as we see the marketing has grown over the years, as we seen the management and organizational behavior has, grown over the years. But why not the people in finance are only stick to that old 100-year knowledge?
Love that question. It's actually true, not just for finance industry. You might be surprised how quickly we become fixed in our way of thinking, and how quickly we start clinging to the past successes. So number one, there is a soft element, and number two, there is a hard element. The soft element is changing the mindset. And the way we do it, usually, we do it through both data and experience. So I'll give you an example of data and an example for experience. Data is taking data that I showed today. I'm happy to send you the PowerPoint, and showing it to your team and actually having a conversation, which is, what is the success model in the old cycle and what does it mean for our profession in the new cycle? So what I usually do, I just bring together a team. I put together a worksheet like this, show them the previous data that I shared with you, the cycle shortening, how many companies are disappearing, how many companies are expected to disappear very soon. And then I give them an assignment and say, what was necessary for success in our industry and also in our team, in our department specifically, in the cycle that was so long? And what is necessary in our industry, in our team, in a cycle that is 6 years? And this conversation results in mindset shifts, but it also results in very, very pragmatic decisions. I'll give you an example. For 3 years, I was a chief transformation officer in a 75,000 people mining and metals company. And when we started, it was a publicly traded company, FTSE 30. When we finished, we took it back private and did a lot of things to save this company because it was on the verge of bankruptcy. As a crisis team, we had to change a lot of minds. If you think banking is conservative, go talk to miners. These are really conservative people. So what we did is we started with this difficult issue of budgeting. I remember very clearly, December 2014, we had finished and signed with the board our budget. You all love your budgeting process, I'm sure. Those of you who love the budgeting process, just in love with it. In our case, 3 rounds, starts in end of August, finishes the 3rd round in early December. Board signs it, everyone hates it. It's the biggest mess in the year. We signed the budget early December 2014. January 2nd or 3rd, 2015, less than a month later, commodities markets open, iron ore, the price goes down 70%. Our budget is crap. It's not even crap, it's actually dangerous. If we keep implementing the budget, we will kill the company. But we are formally publicly traded company, so how did it work? It was a quarter forecast fact. So we had no system to even know what's going on because our recalculation takes 3 months. We simply had no system to adapt a budget because our standard budget is a quarterly budget. We will know the fact in April and then we can adapt. But in the meantime, between January and April, we'll kill the company. And we won't even know how badly we kill the company. So today in this company, we have a dynamic budget that is rolling 18 months forward and it updates once a week. We can pivot once a week. That's an 80,000 now employee company across every country. So you can reinvent your systems, you can make them different, but it starts first with your own team coming to their own conclusion that things have to change. So exercise like this, what did we need to succeed in a long cycle? And how can we succeed in a short cycle? They themselves will start telling you, we need a different budgeting process. We need a different approach to here. We need a different training. But it starts first with data and the mindset work. It doesn't happen on its own. A different way to make the same exercise, I don't know if it's in this article or another one. There's a tool I use all the time called Kill Your Company exercise. Very fun, very simple, and you just wake your team up. Bring people together. Sometimes we bring a huge group. Now in COVID, we don't do big groups. And you can mix them up with also externals. So your suppliers, your customers, you divide them in groups and you give them an assignment for the best way to kill your business. Yeah, best way to kill your business, because everyone thinks they're untouchable. And then you come up with 20 ways your company can be killed in 2 months. Everyone wakes up. Everyone is like, oh my God, I can lose my job. And there's nowhere to run, right? Right now, with the way things, the news are announced every day, the amount of companies that are disrupted, it's not like you can just go somewhere where it's safe. Even monopolies are becoming unsafe. There's very few companies where you can say, I'm untouchable. So there are different ways that you can wake up your company, but it starts first with a mix of rational and emotional intelligence. So you use some data, but you also experientially show people that there is an alternative. Great question. Somebody else. You can type, you can turn on the mic.
Nadya, I have a question here, Matthias from Dubai. Listen, I've never worked in a startup. I never worked in small companies. I only worked in big companies. And when you show me this 75-6, if I would have this discussion in my company, what I would be worried about is that, how should I explain this? Yeah, since the cycle is so short, people will try to do more of incremental innovation than disruptive innovation, because you're so scared of really invest heavily in something when the cycle is so short. So you don't know if you even get the money back. So how do you handle that kind of discussions and problems?
I think that's a wonderful question. And this is a place where I do suggest you guys grab the preview of my new book. This is 85 pages of a preview that you can download for free. So I'll just give it to you. And there's a lot more in the book that I explain, but I'll give you a little bit of a taste of how I deal with it. So number one is understanding what I think people who love innovation don't understand, and people who hate innovation also don't understand. So we need to fix this situation. Is that if we think about cycles, right? And we think about pivots, what we don't speak about, what we speak about so much is what do we change, right? So let's say Philips. You all know Philips. Philips in the 90s, end of 90s, a TV company, 2005, 2007, lighting company, right now, medical equipment company. You know what they're not anymore. You know what have changed. That's what we obsess over it. We know what's new. The most interesting thing of living in old cycles, long cycles and short cycles, especially now in the short cycles, is that it's equally important not only to manage change, but to manage continuity. So it's a dance between change and continuity. And a much more interesting question, much more difficult question is not what do we change, but what do we keep? Not what do we change, but what do we keep? So if you think about Philips and their long cycle, this is actually a company that does one thing very good, which is light. Every product they've ever done, the quality of image in the TV is dependent on the physics of light. The quality of an image for cancer patients in a CAT scan is all about light. It's an issue of light. They know very fully well that this is what they are. So they know very well who they are, and therefore they can reinvent themselves endlessly, and you can keep yourself. So there is a long cycle in this too. There is absolutely a long cycle. It is about dancing continuity and change. And what is happening, we've developed this canvas called Reinvention Portfolio Canvas. It actually shows you at what part of your cycle you need to have very incremental type of change, and at what time in your cycle you need more radical and massive change. And it's very, very simple. When we are in this part of the cycle, we need to go incremental. We already made the jump. Now we need to improve the processes. We need to polish them. We need to figure out better marketing and so on. Once we start approaching this type of cycle, the only way to survive is going radical. And this is the dance between continuity and change, and between knowing what do we keep and what do we go. But making it very clear early on that it's not only about what do we change, but what do we keep. That this is the new strategy conversation in our business. That saves us a lot, because from the beginning, why we use the word reinvention instead of innovation? Because the word reinvention assumes that you will keep something, that you will find a new and improved way, but we keep something. The reason we shifted from the word innovation, because we saw so much resistance in the corporate world. And the word reinvention means that big portion of what you have will stay. It's just a different format of it. I hope that helps. Yeah.
This is now called the Reinvention Cafe. It's not the Innovation Cafe anymore. I'm going to set up a new domain right now. Okay, guys. So I agree with you. And the question that Matthias asked is very, very important, because every single place in the world, fiscal years are the top priority. And every single employee is worried about challenging the status quo with something that will probably get returned in 2-3 years time. So that person will be worried about the fiscal year, or else he gets fired, or he or she doesn't get the bonus. That causes stress for everybody. Shareholders also want value in that fiscal year. It's kind of how the world is formatted, and how we are all formatted as humans, because we prefer a small chocolate now rather than a big chocolate in 3 months' time. There's a book talking about this on behavioral economics. So it's kind of awkward for us as humans to think medium to long term if we can get results in the short term, but we need to do that. That's why many authors now talk about the ambidextrous organization, right? It is able to come up with Horizon 2, Horizon 3 in particular, or disruptive business models. Alexander Westerwalder talks a lot about the portfolio business models, searching while exploring. But we are, in my opinion, organizations are still not ready to do this, because it's not normal unless there's a burning platform or a black swan such as COVID-19. And that's going to become more and more often in my opinion. But we have many people here from large organizations. So what do you think, guys? Is this something that is happening? What kind of problems are you facing? We have the expert here in the room, Nadya, so feel free to ask any questions.
Bruno cannot hear yet for some reason. Nope.
It's your microphone, probably.
It's unmuted for now.
Yeah.
If you can unmute yourself, the sign suggests.
All right, we have a comment here. Also, reinvention is more evident when it happens, rather discuss if something is innovative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't care about the word. I care about results. And the issue is, let's use the words that our culture, and every culture is different, right? So I come into culture, and the culture is all about competitiveness. So I use competitiveness as a way to trigger people. Then I come to some cultures, and they're all about, the intellectual, what is driving them is curiosity. So I frame it as something around the curiosity. I don't give a damn about the word. We need to speak the language that people understand, rather than making jargon that we love. And we come in and we are Scrum and Agile and VUCA and all of that. Just simple things. I always tell the story. So I fly into Congo. This mining company has a big operation in cobalt and copper in Congo. And I'm the first woman in the pit. Mining pit is like a huge hole in the ground. And I'm the only woman who ever went down in a pit in this Congo mine. And I'm standing there with a group of people speaking about the pivot. And the group was not even like the most junior people. These were engineers. And one of them is looking at me and like, are you smoking something in the XCOM? He actually said it. I have the CEO stands next to me and he's like, are you smoking something in the XCOM? People literally do not understand. So we need to meet them where they are with a lot of compassion, but also turn on a different emotion around this. It can be emotion of competitiveness, it can be emotion of fun, it can be emotion of curiosity, but we need to fix an emotional problem, which is fear, with an emotional solution. Just giving them a whole bunch of facts don't work. Yeah.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I was saying I was going on the line of sort of Ugo. So I come from fintech, which theoretically it's guys in t-shirts mixturing with banking. And one of the things that I just wanted to throw out for the discussion is, from my experiences, one is psychological. So not everyone is ready to do innovation. Innovation requests from us to do the discussion. A discussion means I have to be ready to put somebody else and comfortable with my ideas. And coming from the banking side, I don't see it that often. Coming from the technology side, we all know how the biggest companies were created around a garage where we could discuss with our friends freely the ideas that we had, and even disagree. We all know the story from Linux, from Apple, where the disagreement was probably one of the biggest weapons that they used to create Apple, and why it's great. So one part is discussion and psychology and how we're not ready. I just wanted to put it out there. I'm not an expert. The second one, and Hugo pointed out completely right, I totally agree. It's a culture education system. I'm Portuguese as Hugo, and we're all taught by our fathers, by the last generation, don't take risks, get a job, do the 9 to 5, and survive, and that would be great. If you just have a master's degree, you would be the greatest in our hometown, and that's all that we want. It reminds me of Mulan, the movie where you just have to be great around your hometown. That's great. And then what I noticed on the fintech industry is that the life cycles of banking, as I wrote, are bigger. Banks, 15 years ago was impossible for me to, or 20 years ago, impossible for me to talk about online banking. Then it just started with one of the biggest ones, and then they had to open up, and that's it. They just follow the other bigger ones. The same with cloud banking, that 5 years ago I was laughed at when I said that core banking systems should go to the cloud. I was literally laughed at, I'm not kidding. And now it starts to be normal. But for what I still see, and that's what I wanted to throw out for the discussion, is if I'm parachuted with innovation and agile and all the new disruptive ideas on how to share ideas and bring it into an industry that is shaped into waterfalls, projects, return on investments, meetings, consultancies, I always get do me a PowerPoint, explain me what we can get from it, show me what can I do. And I keep telling everyone, if the guy invented the internet, if the guy inventing the Macintosh, if the guy inventing computer systems had to do a PowerPoint and a return of investment just to prove it and to create it, it would have never been done. That's the whole point of innovation. So stop asking me to predict the future. If I could, I would quit the company and do the company myself. So I just wanted to throw it out there, because I think you're absolutely right, Nadya. We need to reinvent ourselves within the lines of what we're good at. But to do so, and I'll end up with this, we need to reinvent especially HR. We keep on neglecting soft skills, and we keep on betting on performance numbers, and that's not going to take us anywhere, as you guys said. That's it. I just wanted to throw it out there because it's my frustration. I wanted to be discussed. No, that's it. Thank you so much.
We're so with you. I mean, this is literally a mindset culture problem, right? This reality of 75 versus 15 is a cultural issue. We are educated out of ability to renew from age 2, 3, 4. A baby doesn't need a bonus to start walking. No baby ever started walking with a bonus. Every baby started walking because it wanted to freaking start walking, right? We wanted to reinvent. It wanted to start something new. It wanted to play. It wanted to touch. And then starting from very early age, the baby said, go safe, be careful, do not touch. Then we go into school. What are we rewarded for? Are we rewarded for mistakes? Are we rewarded for questions? Are we rewarded for trying and making things uncomfortable? No, we're rewarded for knowing what to do in the past. That's what the right answer is. The right answer is a focus on the past. It's not a focus on the future. And we're never awarded for the most disruptive question. We're never awarded for the most uncomfortable new thing. We are awarded for just keep going, right? So this is a cultural issue, but I want to give you guys a trick. This is a trick that is not mine. This is well-researched phenomena. Everyone talks about it. We just forget it because we get frustrated. So I forget it, and I need to remind it myself all the time. And the trick has to do with the law of diffusion of innovation. Remember the law of diffusion of innovation? You all remember the data. About 2.5% of the world are innovators. Then we have about 13.5% are early adopters. So these are people who sleep to get the new iPhone because they like to be the pioneers. They don't sleep it because it's something that tells you about me, who I am. I'm the guy with the flat screen TV, the first one in my whole city. So these are the early adopters psychologically. And then there's a 34%, this is not writing anymore. This is 34%. Early majority, 34%, late majority, and the remainings are laggard. So if we know that this is approximately the average spread, there are two things that we are making, three things. There are three things we make as a mistake. Mistake number one is that we give any attention, and I mean any attention to these people, even if they're on the board. It's irrelevant. There's no point of convincing them. They will switch from a rotary phone when the rotary phone is no longer sold. That's it. This is the only reason they will change. So stop giving them PowerPoints. Stop spending energy talking to them. It's irrelevant.
But unfortunately, the HR lives on that world, right? That's what I feel. The HR lives in the world of skills, of certifications, and certifications, as you said, are from the past. It's something that you're certified, and we make sure that you do that. And it's fine that you have it if you have anything else, but they just look at that.
Yes, so this is the trick. The trick is, number one, when you're looking at your meeting, when you're looking at where your time goes, and when you're looking at should I invite to a meeting, irrelevant, don't invite, just ignore, don't invite. Second trick, these two groups of people, you don't need to spend any time. They will innovate on their own. They're not your target audience. You don't need to waste your time on them. They will change on their own. They will invite. The only thing you need to know about this two group of people, this three group of people, is that the early adopters love innovators, love them, love Steve Jobs, love the presentations, love the black t-shirt, love the whole thing. But the early majority hate them. They will never listen to them, never. The only group that early majority listens to are the early adopters. You bought the flat screen TV and you are my friend, and I will ask you at the water cooler behind the wall, not in a formal meeting. So how is it? How is it? Is it worth it? Should I? They will never listen to these guys. So this guy should not be doing presentations. This guy should not be selling ideas. It should be early adopters who are selling it, because the early majority will only listen to them. They will not listen to you. They don't like you. You don't smell right. You're dangerous. They will only listen to early adopters. So you need to find, number one, your early adopter ambassador who will be speaking on your behalf. And the second thing is, as Hugo is writing about crossing the chasm, we need to understand that this comes from a different theory. This comes from sociology. We need to understand that in a human system, to flip the system, we need somewhere between 20 and 25% of the population, which means we have this, what the literature calls the chasm, right? There's a wonderful book on that, Closing the Chasm. Right here, this is together 16%, and we need to get to 25%. So there's this group of about 10%. That is the real trick, to know who is your 10% and who will speak on your behalf. And shut up and ignore everyone else. Just don't waste your time. It's not a popularity contest. It's not a beauty queen situation. They will never love you. They will never love you. So just get over yourself. They will never love you.
Okay, thanks. I really like it. Ugo, no, how do you guys, what's your experience, Nadia, also on like you can convince your companies, and that's usually takes a while, but you can convince them to go agile and try to be innovative, but then they come back to you with, let's call it reports and KPIs and all, but not agile. What's your experience on that? Because I'm curious, because it's like, it looks like you won a battle, but there's still a huge war to be won. And it feels sometimes, well, that you're going somewhere, but really slow. So what's your take on that for everyone?
Hugo, do you want to go first? I'm happy to go too.
Trying to find the unmute button. Well, Bruno, that depends on the company, right? It depends on the maturity level where they are in what regards innovation or reinvention now. So if the maturity is low, it takes a lot of time to explain what needs to be done. If the maturity is high, probably don't need to explain. You might need to optimize the way they run experiments. They come up with the next big thing. If there's already if the structure is prepared, if there's a cheap innovation or a heavy innovation or whatever. So it really depends on the maturity. The approach is different. What I see now, or recently, is many organizations that are worried about innovation theater, something that Osterwalder talks a lot, and Tendai Vicky as well, because many started innovation labs. Probably the CEO went to play golf with a friend and he said, oh, I have an innovation lab. Okay, I need an innovation lab as well. The same thing was 35 years ago with SAP. Oh, I'm running SAP, so I probably need SAP. Okay. They spent millions or billions sometimes, and then they realized, okay, this is not working for me. So the same thing is happening with innovation labs now, where they are figuring out that, okay, Post-its are not enough, bean bags are not enough. This is not adding value, or we don't even know how to measure these things. And Tendai, I was sharing last week that there's also a case in South Africa, a very successful innovation lab, okay, meaning they've come up with new business models, new products and services. And the core business is not willing to incorporate those new startups, let's say, that are actually adding value. So this is what I see, what I experience, and depending on where they are in the innovation journey, the pitch and the recommendation might be different. I don't see any problem in the adoption of Agile in the IT department, but the problem of Agile, and I'm an ambassador now in the Agile conference, Agile experience, and we were talking about this, is that it's mainly centered in the efficiency, reducing waste. Okay, it's still something from the production line in Lean and Six Sigma and all of that. It's not about reinvention. So actually, if we only do the Agile stuff of reducing waste and optimizing productivity, we'll probably kill our organization, because we are not searching for the next big thing. So when people talk about, when people talk about becoming Agile, I'm like, what do you mean by that?
They still believe that they can just buy Agile, right? It's something that I buy on a Tuesday and then they install it and that's it. I go in and run. That's the feeling I have.
My stance now is more about, you are not a responsible CEO if you don't explore your next business model, because probably you will need to get rid of 40,000 people tomorrow because you are not future-proofing your organization. Disney just fired 27,000 people. And they said, this is due to COVID-19. People are not coming back to theme parks. No, it's not due to COVID-19. Netflix is around for a while. It's entertainment business. And many other examples we can bring to the table. It's because they've decided that the fiscal year was everything and reinvention was not necessary. So is this ethical?
Yeah, I'm so with Hugo. I think the only strategy right now is proactive reinvention. If you are not building the new versions, more than one version of your business right now, you're killing your business right now. But I think part of it is a tool problem. So I got to the place where it's not enough to fix the mindset and the soft and processes. You do have systemic issues. There are tools that are missing, that are building they're bridging the corporate world and the startup world and the reinvention world. So once you guys download this free preview, you will see that will be the last tool. So in the free preview, it's 2 tools in one case. And the last tool, I just want to show you the way we developed this tool. The reason we developed it is because we had a corporate client who had a corporate venture capital fund. And they needed a tool, a physical tool, that will help them create discipline and flexibility for their corporate venture capital fund. And we started with that. And this canvas is all about creating a safe playground, the boundaries for the corporations, to give a boundary to startups. So it starts with, number one, instead of a single goal, it's a range. So instead of 5% growth, it's 2 to 4% growth. And that range is already giving a freedom to startups. And the second thing is setting limits very carefully. Limits could be in terms of customer acquisition, for example, no more than $5 per customer. The price of customer acquisition per person cannot be more than $5. And then it runs as a sprint with a regular agile review process and so on. But just setting that limit is automatically saving a lot of worry for the corporations, because they know that the budget for this portfolio of efforts of tests will not go over these goals, and the limits in terms of cost or geography or any other limits will not expand this. So some of it is a tool problem. It's not a soft issue, just we have not updated a lot of our tools. We have not developed enough tools to bridge the reality of discipline and flexibility. I know we had time, but cool questions.
Everybody's excited. Well, that's why we are running out of time, which is good. One last question.
Yes. Anybody, questions, comments, issues?
Okay, so nobody's struggling with the world of innovation. Great, that's very good to know.
That's a good thing. I think we gave enough food for thought, and shared.
We could stay all night, Bruno, if you Hugo, if you want. I could. That's cool. That's a great topic. Thank you so much. I really like it. It's really cool. We could, and I hope that the fintech and banking world actually takes more depth into this. We're helping out, so let's see. We have a lot to learn with the big techs.
Thank you. I speak Xena on her microphone.
Yeah, I just want to ask, I own my own startup on AI. So like before I worked for Huawei, which is an international company, and there I did first software development, then we worked on kind of software quality management and defined some life cycles for almost 120 people. And like just because as an innovator, I couldn't able to fight in a big company, and then at the end I end up with launching my own startup and just trying to innovate there, which is very, very, how to say, easy now, right now. I mean, innovation process, it's really easy here, but it has some other challenges. Just you are very much experienced, and I am trying to grow my startup. Do you have any suggestions or some resources? This is my question. Just if you can guide me on, like, I know some kind of CMMI level 3, level 5 practices for some life cycle implementations and so on. But in the startup, it's kind of more face-to-face or more agile. It's easier to apply agile and Scrum and so on. But I see you are not talking about just the procedures. You are talking about just very important key points to convince people or create innovation, etc. So maybe you can guide me on this.
What I see with a lot of startups is quite disconnect from the business side of things. So there's a love for the idea or product or technology, but there is no tangible traction with the business, sales, and customers. So I do agree with Hugo on the Lean Startup, and there are a number of other books. Galina says that there are things that are getting outdated, absolutely. But I would start with classic books that will help you get closer to the customer story. Customer understanding, is there even a room for me? For example, there's a wonderful book, I think it's called Mom's Test, that is all about how to test your ideas with the customers. And if your customers are corporations, so if you are using AI and your end who buys it will be a corporate world, you need to learn how to ask them questions. And the mom's test, the premise of that book is that if you ask your mom, is my startup a good startup? Your mom will say, yeah, because she loves you. But you cannot ask anyone who already loves you. You need to go to the real world and so on. So there's a number of classic books that is probably a good place to start. The Lean Startup, the mom's test, there are a number of like a little package. But the biggest issue I see a lot is startups love their product. They're very product and technological innovation oriented. And usually the problem is not with the technical and technological things. It's connection to the market. It's market fit and the customer pain points and the business side of things. So that's where I would focus on.
Exactly, that's the point that we are struggling. I mean, it takes too much time for us to just find the market fit, but we are really trying.
So I would start with something like mom's test. I think let me see, I think there is just a free talk that you can watch now. Yeah, the mom's test is the book, but it's all about figuring out what is there a market fit actually, because usually startuppers are so in love with the idea is the same way moms are in love with their kids, that you are so sure that it's the best thing ever, and then you go to the market and start asking them intelligent questions and they're like, we don't like this, we don't need this, it's like you're not even irrelevant. So mom's test is a great thing also used inside corporations. Sometimes departments speak different languages. You think the other department will love it and they're like, oh. So stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Other books, I'm sure there are others, but great question again.
Thank you.
There was a comment here asking if the Lean Startup book is still valid or is it outdated? You want to comment that, Nadya, as a last question, because we are running out of time?
In terms of the principle, it's not. I mean, the idea of a Lean Startup is don't go too far down the rabbit hole. Come out and see real world and test your idea before anything. So this idea of quick iterations and going to the market as soon as you possibly can, long before you feel comfortable, that principle I think is not outdated. In terms of the specific technologies, we all should adapt all technologies. There's no universal method. So in that sense, every method is outdated the moment we write it down because it's always the past. But the fundamental principle, I still use it myself. We don't launch any product. We don't even start any product before we pre-sell it. We literally, we first sell everything and then we start, including books, including courses, including consulting packages. We first sell it and then we go develop it. We never even start developing things before we sell at least one thing.
All right, so I would say this was a masterclass, another masterclass here at the Innovation Cafe, and I'd like to invite you all to say thank you to Nadya for the time, because I think we learned a lot today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Nadya.
Thank you, Nadya.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
I hope to see you next week, and I hope to see you, Nadya, as well, okay? As a participant, as a speaker again, because you have a lot to share, we have a lot to learn with you, okay?
Thank you so much. You guys are great. It feels very, very natural. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye. Bye.
Goodbye.